Hello, everyone, and welcome to AI in the New Era. It's a privilege to be part of the January 2026 edition of the Stock. I'm Balbodh Chauhan, currently a lead product at Smartsheet, and prior to that, I've spent time at Amazon Prime Video. In both roles, I've seen the same pattern repeat itself. We are living through a massive shift. For the last 5 years, we have been obsessed with capability. How smart is the model? How fast is the token generation? But as we look at 2026, the barrier to enterprise adoption isn't intelligence anymore. It's not about how smart the AI is, it's about how much we can trust it. I call this the invisible barrier. It's the wall that separates a cool prototype from a production system that handles millions of dollars. Today, I'm going to argue that auditability, the boring, the unsexy work of logging and tracing, is actually the ultimate product feature that unlocks revenue. So, as we go through this presentation and talk today, we're going to find out why it is important to design auditability in such a way that it supports our narrative from AI adoption perspective. Let's take a look at where we have been versus where we are. Yesterday, the bottleneck was technical feasibility. The question in every boardroom was, can we build it? We were worried about GPU availability, model latency, context windows. This was the era of microchip, NVIDIA, building more powerful GPUs. But I think today those problems are largely solved. Models are quite commoditized. A lot of startups who were, GPT wrappers have vanished. Infrastructure is abundant. The bottleneck has now shifted downstream to operational trust. The question is no longer, can we build it? It is, can we trust what we have built? So if an AI agent makes a decision that impacts a customer's credit score or automates a supply chain order, can you explain why it did that? If the answer is no, then what we don't have a product, right? We have something called a liability on our hands. It's kind of a gun that doesn't have any safety controls and fires on its own. And so this shift that we talked about in the previous slide is what creates the enterprise trust gap. This table represents the valley of death for most AI projects. In the sandbox experimental AI scenario, success is a demo that makes executives go and say, wow. But in production, success is a boring, predictable outcome that makes legal teams and compliance teams say, okay, you can go ahead. Looking at accuracy tolerance in a sandbox, 90% accuracy is a miracle. You're testing it, it's fine. But when it comes to industries like finance and healthcare, where you don't have that kind of freedom of how do I put this, the freedom of choice, 90% accuracy means you're wrong 1 out of 10 times, and that's an outcome that's not acceptable in those industries. That's a 10% compliance failure, and it's something that those industries cannot work with. So, the biggest difference, right, between these two is the stakeholder. Like, you aren't building for data scientists anymore. You're building for the CISO, the general counsel, and the external auditor. If you take a sandbox mindset into an enterprise environment, you will fail. Not because the tech is bad, but because the overall governance is essentially missing. And so the question becomes, how do we want to address this kind of a trust gap, right? And it's not possible. Like, there's a critical question that comes up, which is, how do we reframe governance from a tax to a product feature, right? Usually, when you talk about governance, it's like the non-interesting, unsexy part of the job. It's like, oh, I have to do this because somebody asked me to do this, but if I had a choice, I wouldn't. So, how do we reframe governance from a tax to a product feature? I think usually product managers, I myself included, don't really like the compliance part more times than not. Um, it feels like an overhead. So I wanted to flip that thinking. First, accelerate sales. In zero trust environments, the security review is like the longest part of the sales cycle. If a product has pre-built transparent auditability, you don't just pass that review, you skip the line. compliance becomes a sales accelerant. The way I have seen this being established is the international certifications like ISOs and your AI certifications that are out there that help customers build confidence and faith in your product. Second, as we're talking about build confidence, trust is the currency of the new era, right? When you show a customer a dashboard that logs every single AI decision, you aren't just showing them logs. You are telling them we have nothing to hide. Whatever happens in the platform is visible to you and available to you. And that builds the confidence that is needed to deploy the product. Lastly, unlock regulated markets. Finally, you cannot sell a black box AI to hospital or a bank. It's illegal. A lot of our EU acts, GDPRs, the NSIT, NIST, the ISO 42001 AI Act, they all AI regulation, they all talk about making the black box a glass box, which is where whatever is happening within is visible to the customers. It's to the point that's illegal. So auditability is the key that unlocks these trillion-dollar TAMs, which weren't, easily accessible before. So to summarize this slide, right, which is don't look at it as a burden. It's the $1 million unlock that helps adoption. And so, whenever you are thinking about how do I build auditability, think about it as a revenue driver by accelerating expansion or preventing churn for customers who are in like more sensitive and regulated industries. So, let me ground this in reality. During my time at Amazon, specifically within the Prime Video financial reporting ecosystem, right, we faced this kind of challenge. The challenge was that we were dealing with high volume financial transactions. The error tolerance was literally zero. We had billions of accounting transactions flowing through systems where you couldn't just use an ML model to guess revenue attribution, right? If we were wrong, we could be held you know in reach of Sarbanes-Oxley. So SOX violations are really something that the accounting teams care about. And so the solution was that we didn't just build a better model, we built an automated compliance architecture. We implemented real-time validation gates. So instead of checking for errors at the end of the every month, which was already too late, we validated every single transaction before it hit the ledger. If the data didn't meet the schema or the confidence threshold, it was rejected instantly. And the result? We eliminated financial reporting risks because we treated the audit trail as more important than the prediction itself. Now, we did build ML models to sample random data to, bring out general trends on what's going wrong from a filing perspective, what data does transactions don't have. But you have to combine that with deterministic outcomes. You have to combine that with deterministic workflows that are very rule based. So you can't just let AI take control of your auditability process. The outcome, in addition to that, accounting teams were happy. We had zero violations of any, controls that we had in place for financial reporting, and that kind of helped me build a muscle on how do we bring this into our AI work. So this leads to my second question that I had on my mind. What architectural decisions matter most in zero risk environments? You cannot bolt compliance on at the end. Hey, here is all the great product, and then can here's this add-on that you can buy if you wanted to. So auditability needs to be baked into the flow. So let's take a look at this diagram right on the right hand side here. Step one is the input validation gate. This is the most critical component. Most AI systems accept any input and try to process it. In zero risk systems, you must have a gate that rejects non-compliant data upstream based on deterministic values. And you can also use at like some sort of AI or LLM to, and you can it's lightweight LLM that you can say, hey, this data does not comply with what I need. You can filter out PII. You can filter out a lot of data just by using the LLM. Step two is the immutable ledger. Notice the green node. This isn't a text log file on a server somewhere. This is a tamper-proof database. The word immutable means that it cannot be changed. And so it is a record of actions that happen because of those XYZ things that somebody did on the system to a, to a ledger of actions that will record that for eternity and it never changes. And so that tamper-proof database is the very important bit in an auditable system because you want to be able to trace back the requests that were generated. So every inference request, every prompt, and every output is written here before it is returned to the user. Now, access to such a database can be hashed so that users don't have access to each other's sort of prompts. That can be a privacy nightmare. And based on like a process that you can design around, getting access to this data, we can have controls where a human is involved. And lastly, is the automated human in the loop. We connect the gate to the ledger. If the confidence score is low, the system automatically routes the task to a human. This allows you to maintain speed for 99% of the requests while ensuring safety for the 1% that matter. For example, let's say there is a critical decision that if the AI misinterpreted could result in a potential impact of lives or millions of dollars or something like that, you would want a human involved in that process. Okay? So we have talked about architecture. Now let's talk about design. We spend millions designing the interface for end user, but in enterprise AI, your most important user is often the one you would ignore. It's the administrator. Like I'm talking from personal experience. I have to work with system admins day in and day out, and the amount of work that they do on behalf of the entire organization is just ridiculous. Anytime a new capability or system is introduced, they are responsible for sort of, percolating it out through their organization. And change management is the most difficult part from an administrator's perspective. And so they have to bear the burden. You add a new admin control, you think, we are going to give admins their another control. That's not a control they're managing, that's an additional overhead. And so we are eating into the time that they already are spending on managing so many systems in their organization. So, coming back to the audit experience, right? This, what you see here is the audit experience. Imagine a CISO is being audited by a regulator. They have 24 hours to prove that your AI didn't hallucinate a specific piece of data or, or something happened. So if your tool forces them to do a grep through JSON logs in a terminal, they will hate you, right? And they will churn. Like they are not, they want their job to be simplified, not made complex. But if you give them a beautiful searchable dashboard that ties back to the data that you have collected, like the one on the screen, where they can filter by date, user, and decision logic, you have just won a customer for life, right? Your admin experience is going to be the competitive mode. And I'll tell you why it's the competitive mode. It's because these admins are the ones that ensure sometimes they are even, there's a purchaser in the organization, which could be your CEO or CISO. Then there is the promoter, and the promoters are usually admins. If they hate your admin experience, they're not going to be liking that tool because it adds more overhead to their own life. So that's where you sort of dig a moat for yourself with the building a good admin experience, um, which sets you apart as a differentiator among plethora of tools that are available there. And I'm not talking about any specific product. This should apply to every enterprise product because every enterprise product is required to have like a nice, great admin supported experience. So, what goes into a great audit experience for an admin, right? It comes down to three components. First, a full context trail. It's not enough to log what happened, right? You need the metadata, like who approved the prompt, what model version was active, what was the temperature setting for, that particular decision. This provides the justification defense. So if anybody asks them, they can, hey, these are the whys because of which we reach this action. Second, what you need is role-based views. Your internal developers need debug logs, which are very detailed to figure out where the error happened. Your external auditors need a high level read only compliance report, right? They should not be forced to go and pull data from five different places to build that compliance report. It should be available out of the box. Figure out what your regular auditable use cases are and automate them, because you don't want compliance folks to be spending too much time in your system. So um, don't mix them up. Build specific views for specific personas depending on where the most important experience lives. And the third is data lineage. This is the holy grail of the entire conversation. Can you visually trace a specific output back to the specific chunk of your data in the vector database that generated it? Like AI is quite non-deterministic, right? And so having the traceability is the only way to know how AI thought in that particular time frame. So, um, can you visually trace the specific output back to specific chunk of data in the vector database that generated it? The visual lineage here is what allows enterprises to sleep at night, right? And putting together these three components is going to be the key for any audit experience, no matter what the architecture. These are the customer facing use cases that you really need in the era of AI. Now, let's switch gears to ROI. Why do so many AI projects get canceled after the project? It's because of the 10% overestimation trap. So look at this chart here. The top bars are what we usually measure: request processed and lab accuracy. These are huge numbers. We processed millions of requests. We have 92% accuracy. But the CFO does not care about requests, right? They care about the bottom bars, the revenue lift, and cost reduction. So this is often a massive gap between model performance and business performance. If you only report on the vanity metrics, then you're setting yourself up for failure when the renewal conversation happens, right? So the the how do we avoid this ROI trap? The reason I'm talking about ROI here is auditability is one fact or one part which is a huge component of adoption from a customer's perspective. And in addition to that, that contributes to the ROI in a much, much, much more strategic way than just your features do, right? Because we talked about how admins are the gatekeepers of a software success in an enterprise. So how do we avoid that trap? Let's take a look at following measurement and timeline. Step one, establish baseline. So before you launch, establish a strict control group. Compare users with AI against users without it. If you don't have a control group, your data is basically just noise, right? Step two, track early signals. Don't wait for revenue. It takes too long. So track leading indicators like time on task or edit rate. If the AI writes an email, how much did the human edit it? That's the proxy for quality. And so um, basically saying that you should have an idea of early signals from an ROI. They look at the input metrics, don't just look at the output metrics. And because if you wait for output metrics, it's going to be too long. Step three, account for the costs. Be honest about the total cost of inference. Include the human review timeline and the compliance overhead. So essentially, don't try to reduce costs because it overestimates the benefit. So be truthful to the costs. And report ranges. Finally, never give a single number. Don't say, we drove 15% growth, because we know that that's not, we cannot be too specific with AI-based workflows. So we can say if we drove between 12%, 15% with 95% confidence, because it sounds more scientific, it builds more credibility. And so um, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a strategic checklist. If you're a product leader in this new era where AI is everywhere, here is what you need to do tomorrow to stand out from the rest of the enterprise players. Treat auditability as a feature, stop hiding it, put it on your pricing page, sell it. That builds the trust that the customers need to have for them to adopt the product seamlessly. If anybody is not advertising their auditability capabilities or controls that they have in an AI product, they are already lagging far behind than some of their competitors who are doing it. So put it front and center. Design the audit experience. Second, Allocate designer resources to your admin tools, make compliance beautiful. Don't just think, hey, it could be just CSV reports or an API call, because nobody is sitting down trying to figure out your APIs, right? So make it a strategic choice to design for a good audit experience. The third bit is automate the no. Build those validation gates, stop bad data before it enters your system, because um, all of that leads to lower trust with your customers. And lastly, we talked about measuring with honesty. So anywhere in an AI world where you have vanity metrics have never helped in any scenario. But I think there is a there's a mm, more alignment or chance to fall into that trap with AI because things are more probabilistic. They're not as deterministic. So measure with honesty, report on actually true business outcomes, and measure the inputs that go into the flow with the level of confidence that you want to showcase. So I just want to wrap it up by saying we're entering like a fascinating time. The technology is ready. The question is, are our processes ready? And what we want to do is make sure that when we're designing auditability experiences and thinking about it as a product feature, we are already taking a step ahead in the right direction. So I believe that companies that win in 2026 won't just be the ones with the smartest models. They will be the ones that are most auditable, the most transparent, and the most trusted. And if you go and take a look at today, Microsoft's, Azure Pages, or what Amazon is doing with its Bedrock guardrails, what you will see is they are putting, as I said, the auditability needs front and center. So thank you for your time today. I'd love to continue this conversation. Feel free to reach out to me via the LinkedIn on the screen, and hope to speak to you soon.